The airlock hissed open, the sound drowned out by the chaos of the hangar bay beyond. The alien command ship was a fortress in space, its cavernous interior teeming with soldiers, machinery, and the hum of war preparations. Amid the clamor, a lone figure slipped through the shadows, moving with a predator's grace. Clad in a stealth suit that bent light around its surface, Captain Darius Cole was invisible to the naked eye, a ghost on a mission. Darius paused behind a stack of cargo crates, his visor displaying a holographic map of the ship. The command center was 3 decks above him, buried behind layers of security and guarded by an elite force of Zorathian warriors. He'd have to move fast. The Zorathians prided themselves on their heightened senses, and even the stealth suit wouldn't protect him if they caught his scent. The mission was simple in theory: infiltrate, sabotage, and escape. In practice, it was a suicide run, but Darius had volunteered without hesitation. When General Krav, the alien commander of the Zorathian fleet, had broadcast his taunt across the galaxy, calling humans cowards unfit for war, Earth had sent a single message in response: prove it. And now, here he was proving it. Darius activated his suit's cloaking field and moved deeper into the hangar. Zorathian soldiers, their hulking forms clad in black armor, marched in perfect formation, oblivious to his presence. He slipped past them, his movements silent, his breathing controlled. Every step brought him closer to the command center and to the heart of the enemy. As he ascended a maintenance ladder to the next deck, his comm unit buzzed in his ear. "Status, Captain," came the voice of Major Elena Voss, his handler back on Earth. Moving to Deck 12, Darius whispered, "No contact yet. The place is crawling with them." "Stay sharp," Elena replied. "Intel suggests Krav is aboard. If you can take him out, it'll send a message they won't forget." "Understood," Darius said, cutting the link. He couldn't afford distractions. Not here. The next deck was quieter, but no less dangerous. The walls were lined with glowing conduits, their eerie light casting long shadows. Darius moved quickly, his suit's sensors picking up faint heat signatures ahead. He slowed, his hand brushing the grip of his plasma blade. 2 Zorathian guards stood at the entrance to a control room, their massive forms blocking the door. Darius assessed the situation, his mind calculating angles and outcomes. He activated the suit's decoy emitter, projecting a faint sound down the corridor. The guards turned, their weapons raised, and in that moment of distraction, Darius struck. The plasma blade hummed as it cut through the first guard's armor, the alien collapsing before it could make a sound. The second turned, its eyes narrowing, but Darius was faster. A single, precise strike ended the threat, and he dragged the bodies into the shadows before slipping into the control room. The room was filled with consoles and monitors, displaying schematics and tactical data. Darius moved to the central terminal and connected his datapad. The device hummed as it began downloading critical information: fleet positions, supply routes, and encrypted communications. Data retrieval in progress, his suit's AI intoned. Estimated time to completion: 3 minutes. 3 minutes. It might as well have been an eternity. Darius positioned himself by the door, his senses on high alert. He knew the Zorathians would notice the missing guards soon. He just had to hold out long enough to complete the download. The first warning came in the form of a low growl. Darius turned to see a Zorathian officer standing in the doorway, its glowing eyes fixed on him. The alarm sounded a second later, the wail reverberating through the ship. Darius cursed under his breath and activated his weapon. The fight was brutal and fast. The officer lunged, its claws raking the air where Darius had been moments before. He dodged and countered, his blade cutting through the alien's side. More soldiers converged on the room, their roars echoing down the corridor. Download complete, the AI announced. Recommend immediate extraction. Darius didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed the datapad and dove through a maintenance hatch, the sound of pursuit close behind. The chase was on, and the fate of humanity's reputation hung in the balance. Darius moved through the narrow maintenance shaft, his breath steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. The sound of Zorathian boots echoed behind him, growing louder with each passing moment. He pushed forward, his mind racing. The datapad in his hand held the key to dismantling the Zorathian fleet, but only if he could get it back to Earth. He reached an access panel and pried it open, slipping into a dimly lit corridor. The ship's architecture was alien and disorienting, with its organic curves and pulsating lights. Darius checked his map, plotting the quickest route to the hangar. His extraction ship was waiting, cloaked and ready to depart the moment he arrived. The corridor ahead split into 2 paths. Darius hesitated, his suit's sensors scanning for heat signatures. The left path was clear, but the right was swarming with activity. He took the left, moving swiftly but cautiously. Every step felt like a gamble, every corner a potential ambush. As he approached an intersection, the sound of heavy breathing reached his ears. Darius flattened himself against the wall, his plasma blade at the ready. A Zorathian patrol rounded the corner, their glowing eyes scanning the corridor. Darius held his breath, his finger hovering over the emitter that would activate his decoy. The patrol moved past him, their steps fading into the distance. Darius exhaled slowly and continued on, his pace quickening. The hangar was close now, just one more deck below. He reached a maintenance lift and stepped inside, the cramped space barely large enough for his frame. The lift descended, its hum a quiet backdrop to the pounding of his heart. When the doors opened, he was greeted by the sight of the hangar, vast, chaotic, and teeming with activity. Zorathian soldiers swarmed the area, their voices sharp and urgent. The alarms had heightened their alertness, and Darius knew his stealth suit wouldn't protect him forever. He scanned the hangar, his visor highlighting the cloaked outline of his extraction ship. It was parked near a stack of cargo crates, its engines powered down to avoid detection. Darius made his move, slipping between shadows and using the noise of the hangar to mask his movements. He reached the ship and tapped a code into his wrist communicator. The ship's hatch opened silently, and Darius climbed aboard. "Welcome back, Captain," the ship's AI said. "Initiating launch sequence." "Hold off," Darius said. "We're not done yet." He connected the datapad to the ship's console, the data transferring to Earth's command network. As he worked, his mind raced. The Zorathians would be on high alert after this, but he needed to send a message, a demonstration of human ingenuity and defiance that would echo across the galaxy. His gaze fell on the ship's weapons system, an idea forming in his mind. The Zorathians had a reactor core near the hangar, a critical piece of their power grid. If he could disable it, the resulting chain reaction would cripple the entire command ship. "AI," Darius said, his voice steady. "Prepare a targeted strike on the reactor core. Set it to detonate after I'm clear." "Understood," the AI replied. "Strike locked. Timer set to 3 minutes post-departure." The data transfer completed, and Darius disconnected the datapad. He activated the ship's engines, the hum growing louder as the vessel powered up. Zorathian soldiers turned, their shouts drowned out by the roar of the ship as it lifted off. Darius piloted the ship out of the hangar, weaving through the chaos as Zorathian fighters scrambled to intercept him. The command ship's weapons fired, beams of energy cutting through the void. Darius evaded them with precision, his hands steady on the controls. Behind him, the reactor core detonated. The explosion lit up the darkness, a brilliant cascade of light and energy that engulfed the command ship. Darius didn't look back. He accelerated into the void, his focus on the mission ahead. As he entered hyperspace, the tension in his chest eased. The data was secure, the Zorathian fleet crippled, and Earth's message delivered. Humanity wasn't just brave, it was unstoppable. As Darius's ship exited hyperspace and entered Earth's secure space, a wave of relief washed over him. The planet's blue and green surface came into view, a stark contrast to the cold void he had left behind. The mission had been a success, but he knew there would be no time to rest. The data he had retrieved would shape the next phase of the war. "Captain Cole, this is Earth Command," came a voice over the comms. "You are cleared for landing at Secure Base Delta. Welcome home." The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, the engines leaving a faint trail in the sky as it approached the sprawling military base. As Darius landed and stepped onto the tarmac, a team of officers and analysts rushed to meet him. Among them was Major Elena Voss, her expression a mix of pride and urgency. "You pulled it off," she said, clasping his arm in a firm handshake. "The intel you brought back, fleet positions, supply routes, encryption codes, it's a goldmine." "Good," Darius said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "We need to hit them hard while they're vulnerable." Elena nodded, her gaze sharpening. "We've already identified key targets. The data you retrieved confirms that their fleet is stretched thin. This is our chance to turn the tide." As the analysts pored over the data, Darius was debriefed in a secure chamber. He recounted every detail of the mission, from his infiltration of the Zorathian ship to the reactor's detonation. The officers listened intently, their faces grim. The stakes were higher than ever, and every decision carried the weight of humanity's survival. After the debriefing, Darius found himself alone in the base's barracks. He sat on the edge of his cot, the adrenaline of the mission fading into a deep fatigue. The scars of the war, both visible and hidden, weighed heavily on him. He thought of the lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the daunting challenges that still lay ahead. His comm unit buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Elena. "Darius, we need you in the command center. Something's come up." He rose, his body protesting with every movement, and made his way to the command center. The room was abuzz with activity. Officers and analysts crowded around a massive holographic display. At its center was an image of the Zorathian fleet, their movements highlighted in red. "They're They're regrouping, Elena said, her voice tense. The destruction of their command ship was a blow, but it wasn't enough to stop them. They're consolidating their forces near the Arcanis Nebula, and it looks like they're planning a counteroffensive. Darius studied the display, his mind racing. They'll come at us with everything they've got, he said. We need to be ready. Elena nodded. That's why we're launching a preemptive strike. We'll hit them before they can hit us. And this time, you won't be alone. We're sending a full task force. The plan was ambitious. A coordinated assault on the Zorathian fleet, targeting their carriers and supply ships. It would require precision, bravery, and flawless execution. Darius would lead the operation, his experience and tactical genius essential to its success. The next days were a blur of preparations. The task force assembled, a formidable fleet of Earth's finest ships and soldiers. Darius worked tirelessly, briefing his team, refining strategies, and ensuring every detail was accounted for. As the fleet prepared to depart, he stood on the bridge of the flagship Resolute, his gaze fixed on the stars. This is it, Elena said, standing beside him. Everything we've fought for comes down to this. Darius nodded, his resolve unshakable. Then let's make it count. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, the stars stretching into streaks of light as they surged toward their target. The Zorathian fleet awaited them, a wall of warships bristling with firepower. But Earth's forces were ready. As the battle began, Darius felt the weight of the moment, a clash that would determine the fate of two civilizations. The first volley from the Zorathian fleet lit up the void, a dazzling cascade of energy beams and plasma rounds. Earth's ships responded in kind, their weapon systems unleashing a torrent of firepower. The battle erupted in a symphony of chaos, with ships darting and weaving through the maelstrom, their shields flaring under the onslaught. Darius stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his voice calm and commanding as he directed the fleet's movements. Focus fire on their carriers, he ordered. Cut off their ability to launch fighters. The Resolute's cannons roared, their blasts tearing into the hull of a Zorathian carrier. Smaller Earth ships swarmed the battlefield, targeting supply vessels and disrupting the enemy's formations. Despite their numerical disadvantage, Earth's forces fought with a tenacity that defied the odds. On the Zorathian flagship, General Krav watched the battle with a mixture of rage and disbelief. His taunt had been meant to provoke a display of weakness, not this audacious defiance. Bring me their commander, he growled to his officers. I want to see the face of the human who dares challenge us. Back on the Resolute, Darius analyzed the battlefield, his mind working faster than the chaos unfolding around him. The Zorathians were formidable, but they were overconfident, their tactics predictable. He saw an opportunity, a weak point in their formation that could be exploited. Send Strike Group Theta to flank their flagship, Darius ordered. Draw their attention away from the main assault. Elena's voice came through the comms, sharp and focused. Strike Group Theta deploying. We'll give them something to think about. As the strike group moved into position, the Zorathian flagship turned its massive cannons toward them. Darius anticipated the maneuver and acted swiftly. All ships, target the flagship's port engines. Disable their mobility. The coordinated assault was devastating. Earth's ships concentrated their fire, the relentless barrage overwhelming the flagship's shields and tearing into its hull. Explosions rippled across the Zorathian vessel as it listed to one side, its engines sputtering. But the battle was far from over. A wave of Zorathian fighters swarmed toward the Resolute, their sleek forms weaving through the chaos. Darius gripped the edge of the console, his mind racing. Deploy interceptors. Keep them off us. The Resolute's hangar doors opened, releasing a squadron of fighters that engaged the enemy in a fierce dogfight. The void was alive with the streaks of tracer rounds and the flare of detonations as the pilots fought with unmatched bravery. Despite their losses, Earth's fleet began to gain the upper hand. The Zorathian lines faltered, their ships retreating under the relentless pressure. General Krav, his pride shattered, barked orders to regroup, but it was too late. The tide had turned. As the battle reached its climax, Darius saw his chance to end it. Target their command center, he ordered. Let's finish this. The Resolute's main cannon charged, its energy core glowing with a blinding intensity. The shot fired, a beam of pure destruction that pierced the Zorathian flagship's command center. The ship erupted in a massive explosion, the shockwave rippling across the battlefield. With their flagship destroyed, the remaining Zorathian forces broke ranks and retreated, their will to fight extinguished. Earth's fleet held its position, battered but victorious. The battle was over, and humanity had proven its strength once again. As the cheers of his crew echoed through the bridge, Darius allowed himself a moment of reflection. The cost had been great, but the victory was undeniable. Humanity had faced the challenge head-on and emerged triumphant, its courage and ingenuity shining in in the face of overwhelming odds. Elena approached, her expression a mix of pride and exhaustion. "We did it," she said softly. Darius nodded, his gaze fixed on the debris-strewn void. "We showed them what we're made of. But this is just the beginning. They'll come back, and we'll be ready." The Resolute turned toward Earth, its engines burning bright as it carried its crew home. The galaxy had been given a new message, one that would echo through the stars for generations. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The return to Earth was met with a hero's welcome. The fleet descended to roaring crowds and celebrations that spread across the globe. For the first time in years, humanity felt a sense of hope, a belief that they could stand against the vastness of the galaxy and emerge victorious. Darius stepped off the Resolute to a sea of faces, soldiers, civilians, and leaders all gathered to honor the heroes of the battle. Elena walked beside him, her usually sharp demeanor softened by the sight of the crowd's unbridled joy. "Looks like you're a legend now," she said with a smirk. Darius shook his head, his expression serious. "I didn't do this for glory. We're still in a war, Elena. One victory doesn't end it." Her smile faded, and she nodded. "True, but it's a hell of a first step." In the days that followed, Earth's leaders convened to discuss the next phase of the conflict. The data retrieved from the Zorathian command ship had revealed more than just fleet positions. It had exposed fractures within the Empire itself. Rival factions within the Zorathian hierarchy were vying for power, their unity crumbling under the strain of prolonged war. Elias took his place at the strategy table, the holographic display before him showing a map of Zorathian-controlled space. He pointed to a cluster of systems marked in red. "These are their critical supply hubs," he said. "If we take these out, we'll cripple their ability to sustain their fleets." One of the generals leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "And what about their internal divisions? Can we exploit that?" Elena spoke up, her tone measured. "We already are. Our intelligence teams have been seeding dissent within their ranks. It's working, but we need to hit them while they're distracted." The plan that emerged was bold, a multi-pronged campaign targeting the Zorathians' infrastructure and capitalizing on their fractured leadership. Darius was tasked with leading a covert strike team to infiltrate one of their key supply hubs, a mission reminiscent of his first against the command ship. As he prepared for the operation, Darius found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but he carried it with pride. He thought of the lives lost in the struggle, their sacrifices fueling his resolve to see the fight through. The mission began under the cover of darkness. Darius and his team approached the supply hub aboard a stealth cruiser, its cloaking systems rendering it invisible to the Zorathian sensors. The facility was a sprawling complex, its docks filled with cargo ships and transport vessels. As they infiltrated the hub, Darius couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Zorathian defenses were sparse, their patrols irregular. It was too easy, almost as if they had been allowed to slip through. "Captain, I've got a bad feeling about this," one of his operatives said over the comms. "Stay sharp," Darius replied, his voice steady. "We're in and out. No heroics." They reached the central control room and began planting charges on the facility's reactors. As the last charge was set, the alarms blared and the doors slammed shut. The Zorathians had been waiting for them. Darius's team moved into defensive positions, their weapons trained on the entrance. The air was thick with tension as the first wave of Zorathian soldiers poured into the room. The firefight was brutal and chaotic, the confined space amplifying the intensity of the battle. Through it all, Darius remained calm, his commands clear and decisive. His team fought with precision, their training and camaraderie evident in every movement. But the odds were stacked against them, and casualties mounted. As the last charge detonated, the facility began to collapse, its reactors erupting in a chain reaction. Darius led the survivors to an emergency escape route, their path fraught with danger. They reached the stealth cruiser moments before the facility was consumed in a massive explosion. The mission had been a success, but the cost was steep. As the cruiser slipped into hyperspace, Darius sat in the cockpit, his expression somber. He thought of the fallen, their faces etched into his memory. The war was far from over, and the sacrifices would only grow. Back on Earth, the intelligence gathered during the mission revealed the true extent of the Zorathians' internal divisions. The rebellion within their ranks was growing, fueled by the strain of war and the loss of key leaders. Humanity's actions had not only weakened their enemy, but also inspired others to rise against tyranny. Darius stood before the council, his voice resolute. "We've shown the galaxy that humanity is not to be underestimated. Now it's time to finish what we started. We fight not just for Earth, but for a future where no one lives under the shadow of oppression." The council erupted into applause, their determination matching his. The fight was far from over, but humanity was no no longer alone. The galaxy had heard their message, and allies were beginning to emerge from the most unlikely places. The tide of the war began to shift as news of humanity's victories spread across the galaxy. Systems once loyal to the Zorathians started to question their allegiance, their leaders wary of backing a faltering empire. Meanwhile, independent factions, long oppressed by the Zorathians, reached out to Earth with offers of alliance. Darius found himself at the center of a burgeoning coalition. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered in Earth's orbit aboard the Resolute, the flagship serving as a neutral ground for negotiations. The room buzzed with tension as species with little in common, aside from a shared hatred for the Zorathians, debated strategy and terms. One such delegate, a tall, insectoid figure named Threx of the Kesari, rose to address the assembly. Humans have proven themselves resourceful and tenacious, Threx said, their mandibles clicking with emphasis. But this war is far from won. The Zorathians are wounded, not defeated. If we are to stand together, we must act decisively. Darius, seated at the head of the table, leaned forward. Decisive action is exactly what we're planning, he said. We've identified their last stronghold, a fortress world near the galactic core. If we take it, the Empire's power will collapse. The room erupted into murmurs, some delegates nodding in agreement while others voiced concerns. A feline-like delegate from the Orithis Alliance spoke next. A direct assault on their stronghold is madness. Their defenses are impenetrable. It's risky, Elena interjected, her tone calm but firm. But the Zorathians are on the defensive. If we give them time to regroup, we may never get another chance. After hours of deliberation, the coalition reached a consensus. The attack on the fortress world would proceed, with each faction contributing forces to the effort. It was a gamble, but one they all agreed was worth taking. The preparations for the assault were monumental. Fleets from dozens of systems converged on a staging point near the Zorathian border, their combined firepower a testament to the coalition's resolve. Darius worked tirelessly, coordinating strategy and ensuring that every ship and soldier was prepared for the fight ahead. As the fleet prepared to jump into hyperspace, Darius addressed the assembled forces via a galaxy-wide broadcast. "We stand at the brink of history," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "Today, we fight not just for survival, but for freedom, for a galaxy free from tyranny. Together, we will show the Zorathians that their reign is over." The fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their arrival a dazzling display of unity and power. The fortress world loomed ahead, its surface bristling with weapons and shield generators. Zorathian ships moved to intercept, their sleek forms cutting through the void with lethal precision. The battle that followed was the largest and most brutal of the war. The coalition's ships clashed with the Zorathian fleet in a chaotic ballet of fire and destruction. Fighters swarmed like hornets, their lasers carving streaks of light through the darkness. Capital ships exchanged broadsides, their shields flaring under the impact of heavy ordnance. Darius led the charge aboard the Resolute, his tactical brilliance guiding the coalition forces through the chaos. "Target their shield generators," he ordered, his voice calm despite the intensity of the battle. "We need to create an opening for the ground teams." The coalition's efforts paid off as a coordinated strike disabled the fortress's planetary shields. Ground forces, including elite units from Earth and its allies, descended to the surface in dropships, their mission to disable the fortress's command center. Darius joined the ground assault, his presence a rallying point for the troops. The battle on the surface was fierce, with Zorathian soldiers fighting to the bitter end. But the coalition's unity and determination proved unstoppable. As they breached the fortress's walls, the defenders' morale crumbled. The final confrontation took place in the fortress's command chamber. General Krav, his once imposing figure now haggard and desperate, faced Darius with a snarl. "You think you've won?" he spat. "This galaxy will never unite. Chaos will consume you all." Darius met his gaze, his expression unyielding. "Maybe, but we'll face that chaos together. And we'll face it free." The fight was brief but decisive. With Krav's defeat, the fortress fell, and the remaining Zorathian forces surrendered. The coalition's victory was complete, their unity cemented by the shared triumph. As the fleet departed the fortress world, carrying the prisoners and the wounded, Darius stood on the bridge of the Resolute. He looked out at the stars, the weight of the war beginning to lift. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had played a pivotal role in shaping its future. The coalition's victory over the Zorathian Empire marked the dawn of a new era. Across the galaxy, oppressed systems celebrated their newfound freedom, their people no longer living in fear of the Empire's tyranny. The fall of the fortress world was not just a military triumph. It was a symbolic moment that united species from every corner of the stars. Back on Earth, Darius was welcomed as a hero, but the man himself remained humbled by the experience. Standing on the balcony of the Global Council's headquarters, he looked out at the sprawling city below, its lights shimmering like stars. The war had taken its toll on him, both physically and emotionally, but the sight of a galaxy rebuilding itself was a balm for his soul. Elena joined him, her expression unreadable as she leaned against the railing. "You've done something extraordinary, Darius," she said. "The galaxy owes you more than it can ever repay." "I didn't do it alone," he replied, his voice tinged with weariness. "It was the coalition, the people who believed in something bigger than themselves. That's what made the difference." She nodded, her gaze distant. "And now comes the hard part, keeping the peace." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of diplomatic efforts. The coalition, now formalized as the Galactic Alliance, worked tirelessly to establish a framework for governance and cooperation. Darius played a key role in these discussions, his experience and integrity earning him the respect of leaders from across the galaxy. The Zorathians, meanwhile, faced a reckoning. Their remaining leadership was brought before a tribunal, charged with crimes against countless civilizations. Some expressed remorse, others defiance, but the message was clear: the galaxy would no longer tolerate tyranny. Darius attended the tribunal's closing session, his presence a reminder of the cost of freedom. As the sentences were handed down, he felt a sense of closure, not just for himself, but for the billions who had suffered under the Empire's rule. But even as the galaxy moved toward unity, challenges remained. The scars of war were deep, and the task of rebuilding seemed insurmountable at times. Darius traveled to newly liberated worlds, offering support and reassurance to those still grappling with the aftermath. On a desert planet once ravaged by the Empire's mining operations, he met a young boy who had lost his family in the conflict. "Is it over now?" the boy asked, his eyes wide with hope and fear. Darius knelt to meet his gaze. "It's over," he said softly, "and we're gonna make sure it stays that way." Moments like these reminded Darius why he had fought, why he had endured the horrors of war. It wasn't for glory or power, it was for the people, the innocents who deserved a chance to live free. As the years passed, the Galactic Alliance grew stronger, its foundations built on trust and cooperation. New technologies emerged, born from the collaboration of species that had once been enemies. Trade routes flourished, cultural exchanges deepened understanding, and a sense of shared destiny began to take root. Darius, now a senior advisor to the Alliance, found solace in mentoring the next generation of leaders. He shared his experiences, his lessons, and his unwavering belief in the power of unity. One of his protégés, a fiery young diplomat from the Kesari, often challenged his views, pushing him to think in new ways. "You're stubborn, old man," she said with a grin during one heated debate. "And you're impatient," Darius replied, a rare smile touching his lips. "But maybe that's what we need, a little impatience to keep us moving forward." In his quieter moments, Darius reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of the battles fought, the sacrifices made, and the lives changed. The galaxy was far from perfect, but it was better than it had been, and that was enough. One evening, as he stood beneath the stars, Elena approached him with a datapad in hand. "They want to name a star system after you," she said, her tone amused. Darius shook his head. "I don't need that. The work we've done, that's my legacy." She nodded, understanding. "Still, it wouldn't hurt to let them celebrate you a little." He chuckled, the sound light and genuine. "Maybe, but let's finish what we started first." As the stars twinkled above, Darius felt a sense of peace. The galaxy was in good hands, its future bright with possibility. And though his journey was nearing its end, he knew that the fight for justice and unity would continue, a fight worth every sacrifice. The galaxy was no longer divided by fear and oppression. It was united by hope, courage, and the indomitable spirit of those who refused to give up. And in that unity, Darius saw the promise of a brighter tomorrow as the Galactic Alliance solidified its presence across the galaxy. A sense of cautious optimism began to permeate even the most war-torn systems. The collaborative efforts of former enemies yielded innovations in medicine, energy, and communication, creating opportunities that had once seemed unattainable. Darius continued to play a pivotal role in these efforts, though his focus shifted from the battlefield to the diplomatic arena. His reputation as both a warrior and a peacemaker made him a unifying figure, someone who could bridge divides that others deemed insurmountable. One of the Alliance's most ambitious projects was the Stellar Reconciliation Initiative, a program aimed at fostering understanding between species that had once been at odds. Darius spearheaded the program, traveling to distant worlds to meet with leaders and citizens alike. On one such journey, he visited a Zorathian colony that had renounced its ties to the old empire. The colony's leader, a stoic yet hopeful Zorathian named Akar, welcomed Darius with a mix of curiosity and respect. "Your people have proven resilient," resilient, Akar said, his tone measured. But can we truly trust each other after so much blood has been spilled? Darius met his gaze, his voice steady. Trust isn't built overnight. It's earned through actions, through a commitment to something greater than ourselves. We can't undo the past, but we can decide what the future looks like. The visit was a turning point, not just for the colony but for Darius as well. He saw firsthand the potential for healing, even in the face of deep wounds. It was a reminder that the fight for unity was as much about listening and understanding as it was about strength and strategy. As the years passed, the galaxy began to change in ways that no one had anticipated. Former Zarathian engineers collaborated with human scientists to develop starship engines capable of reaching previously inaccessible regions of space. Cultural exchanges led to the creation of art and music that blended traditions from across the stars. The Alliance, once a fragile coalition, became a beacon of hope for civilizations beyond its borders. Darius, now in his later years, found himself reflecting more often. The weight of his experiences lingered, but so did the pride in what had been accomplished. He spent his days mentoring future leaders, sharing the lessons he had learned through a lifetime of service. One day, as he walked through a bustling market on Nova Prometheus, a young girl approached him. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she held out a small, hand-carved figure of a starship. "Is it true you helped save the galaxy?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Darius crouched to her level, a gentle smile on his face. "It wasn't just me," he said. "It was people like you, people who believe in something bigger than themselves. That's what really saves the galaxy." The girl beamed, clutching the figure tightly as she ran back to her family. Darius watched her go, a sense of peace settling over him. The galaxy was in good hands, its future bright with potential. As he returned to his quarters, Darius received a message from Elena. "The council's asking for you," she said, her tone tinged with amusement. "Apparently, they want your opinion on the next big initiative." Darius chuckled. "They don't need me for that. They've got plenty of smart people to figure it out." "Maybe," Elena replied, "but there's only one Darius Cole." The conversation lingered in his mind as he stepped onto his balcony, the stars stretching out before him. He thought of the battles fought, the alliances forged, and the lives touched by the fight for freedom. The galaxy was far from perfect, but it was better, and that was enough. In the vast expanse of space, Darius saw not just the scars of war but the promise of what could be. He had given everything to the cause, and though his journey was nearing its end, he felt no regret. The galaxy was moving forward, one step at a time, toward a brighter tomorrow. And as the stars shimmered above, Darius Cole, the soldier, the diplomat, the legend, smiled, knowing that the best was yet to come. In the years that followed, the Galactic Alliance became a symbol of what was possible when civilizations put aside their differences. The scars of the war began to heal, though they served as a reminder of the cost of division and the power of unity. Darius's role within the Alliance shifted as new leaders emerged, eager to carry the torch. He became an advisor, a mentor, and a storyteller, sharing his experiences with those who would shape the galaxy's future. His presence was a steadying force, his wisdom a guiding light for the next generation. One of his final public appearances was at the dedication of the Galactic Monument of Unity, a towering structure built on the newly christened Unity Prime. The monument was a collaborative effort, its design incorporating elements from every species that had contributed to the Alliance. At its base, an eternal flame burned, a tribute to those who had given their lives for freedom. Darius stood before the gathered crowd, his voice strong despite his advancing years. "This monument is more than a symbol," he said. "It's a promise, a reminder that our strength lies in our diversity, in our ability to stand together against any challenge. Let this flame guide us, not as individuals, but as a united galaxy." The applause that followed was thunderous, a testament to the impact of his words. But as Darius stepped away from the podium, he felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. His work was done, his mission complete. In the quiet moments that followed, Darius found solace in the simple joys of life. He tended to a small garden on Nova Prometheus, its blooms a vibrant reminder of renewal. He corresponded with old allies, sharing stories and laughter that transcended the boundaries of time and space. One day, as he watched the sun set over the horizon, a message arrived from the Galactic Alliance. It was a request for his presence at a historic summit, a gathering of newly discovered civilizations eager to join the Alliance. Darius smiled, his heart swelling with pride. The galaxy was growing, its potential boundless. He accepted the invitation, knowing that his journey was far from over. As he prepared to depart, he looked once more at the stars, their light a beacon of hope and possibility. The galaxy had changed, and so had he. But one truth remained constant. The fight for unity, for justice, for a better tomorrow was always worth it. And so, So, with the stars as his guide and the promise of a brighter future in his heart, Darius Cole stepped into the next chapter of his story, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The historic summit on Unity Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Delegates from newly discovered civilizations mingled with seasoned members of the Galactic Alliance, their shared curiosity and hope for the future palpable in the air. The Grand Chamber, a circular hall designed to symbolize equality, buzzed with the hum of translators and quiet conversations. Darius arrived to a standing ovation, his presence a reminder of the sacrifices and triumphs that had made the Alliance possible. Though he no longer sought the spotlight, the respect and admiration of those present were undeniable. As he took his seat among the senior advisors, he felt a sense of belonging that transcended words. The summit's discussions ranged from trade agreements to cultural exchanges, from scientific collaborations to strategies for maintaining peace. Darius listened intently, his mind sharp despite his years. He offered insights when needed, his words carrying the weight of experience and a deep understanding of what it took to unite a galaxy. During a break in the proceedings, Darius found himself approached by a young delegate from a crystalline species recently welcomed into the Alliance. Their voice was melodic, their crystalline form shimmering in the chamber's light. "Advisor Cole," they said, "your actions inspired my people to believe in a future beyond isolation. How do you find the strength to keep fighting for unity, even when the path is difficult?" Darius smiled, his gaze thoughtful. "The strength comes from knowing that every step we take brings us closer to something greater than ourselves," he said. "It's not about perfection. It's about progress, about leaving the galaxy better than we found it." The delegate nodded, their form glowing softly. "Thank you. Your wisdom will guide us as we take our first steps as part of this alliance." As the summit continued, decisions were made that would shape the galaxy's future for generations. New alliances were forged, treaties signed, and initiatives launched to ensure that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. The flame of unity, kindled by struggle and sacrifice, burned brighter than ever. When the summit concluded, Darius stood with the other delegates as the monument of unity's eternal flame was rekindled in a symbolic gesture. As the light rose, illuminating the chamber, Darius felt a profound sense of closure. The galaxy he had fought for was no longer a dream. It was a reality, alive with the promise of what could be. In the years that followed, Darius remained a steadfast presence within the Alliance. Though his roles grew smaller, his influence never waned. He became a storyteller, sharing tales of courage, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of those who had fought for freedom. His stories were passed down through generations, inspiring countless others to believe in the power of unity. One quiet evening, as the twin moons of Nova Prometheus cast their silvery light over the garden he had tended for years, Darius sat beneath an ancient tree. He looked up at the stars, their light a tapestry of the galaxy's endless possibilities. His journey had been long, and though his time was drawing to a close, he felt no fear, only gratitude for the life he had lived and the legacy he had helped create. As the night deepened, a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, a reminder of renewal and hope. Darius closed his eyes, a peaceful smile on his lips. The galaxy was moving forward, and he knew with unwavering certainty that the best was yet to come.